What if the person you're holding on to isn't the problem? You are. Let that sink in. Not because you're unworthy, not because you're broken, but because you've mistaken attachment for love, sacrifice for strength, and silence for dignity. You've turned yourself into a museum of their indifference, carefully preserving every half-hearted text, every empty promise, every time they made you feel like an afterthought. And here's the brutal truth. You built that museum. You gave them the keys. You dust the exhibits every damn day. For what? Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that love is a battle. That if you just fight hard enough, bleed loudly enough, they'll finally see you. That if you shrink yourself small enough, quiet enough, they'll suddenly hear you. Jung called this the shadow of longing, the part of us that confuses suffering for devotion, that worships at the altar of almost, praying for crumbs while starving for a feast. You think if you stay, they'll change. You think if you love harder, they'll wake up. You think your endurance is noble. But let's rip off the veil. You're not waiting for them. You're waiting for you, the version of you that finally believes they're worth more than conditional affection. Here's what no one tells you. Love doesn't negotiate. It doesn't haggle. It doesn't keep score. And it never asks you to abandon yourself at its doorstep. Yet you've turned your heart into a bargaining chip. If I give up my boundaries, if I swallow my pride, if I pretend not to notice the disrespect, then maybe they'll stay. But what happens when staying becomes a prison sentence? When their presence feels like a haunting? Jung warned us, where love rules, there is no will to power. But you've handed them a throne. You've let them crown themselves ruler of your worth. The uncomfortable mirror. Let's pause here. Breathe. I need you to ask yourself, what are you really clinging to? Is it them, or the fantasy of who they could be? Is it love, or the addiction to fixing what refuses to be fixed? This isn't about blame. This is about seeing. Every moment you spend trying to convince someone of your value, you're auditioning for a role they've already cast someone else in. And here's the kicker, they're not the director. You are. But you've been handing them the script, letting them rewrite your lines, edit your scenes, until you no longer recognize the story you're in. The cost of staying. Let's talk about the toll. Every time you mute your voice to keep the peace, a part of you goes numb. Every time you rationalize their indifference, you bury a piece of your intuition. Every time you say, I'm fine, when you're screaming inside, you sever a thread of your authenticity. This isn't love. This is slow surrender. Jung called this self-fragmentation, the splintering of the soul when we prioritize someone else's comfort over our own wholeness. You've become a living compromise, a negotiator between your truth and their apathy. And the price? Your light dims. Your fire smothers. Your essence leaks out like water through clenched fists. This video was produced by Rocket Motivation. Please like and subscribe to support us. Thank you for listening. Transition to the edge. But here's the secret they're afraid to tell you. Letting go isn't loss. It's liberation. It's the moment you stop begging a closed door to open and realize you're the one holding the key. Stay with that. We'll go deeper. You say you want freedom, but your hands are still clenched around the chains. Let's name it. You're addicted to the ache. Not because you love pain, but because the ache feels familiar. Predictable. It whispers, at least you're feeling something. And in that twisted calculus, you've convinced yourself that feeling anything, even agony, is better than the terrifying unknown of letting go. But here's the poison in that logic. Familiarity is not the same as safety. A prison cell you've memorized is still a prison. You're not loving them, you're projecting yourself. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what about everything we idealize in others? When you replay their rare moments of kindness, their flickers of warmth, what are you really clinging to? Is it them, or the reflection of the love you wish to see in yourself? You've turned them into a mirror. Every time you say, if they just change, I'd be happy, you're refusing to look at the crack in the glass. The crack you refuse to mend. This is the shadow work you've been avoiding. You've projected your own unmet potential onto them. Their inability to love you isn't the wound, it's the symptom. The real injury is your belief that their validation could ever heal your invisibility to yourself. The myth of the noble struggle. You've romanticized the fight. You call it loyalty, perseverance, real love. But strip away the fairy tales and what's left? A child begging for attention. A martyr bleeding on a cross they built themselves. Jung called this the martyr archetype, the part of you that conflates suffering with virtue. It's seductive, isn't it? To wear your pain like a crown, to whisper, "Look how much I can endure." But endurance is not wisdom. And sacrifice without self-respect is just self-destruction in a halo. Let's be brutally clear. You cannot love someone into loving you. You cannot heal them by letting them break you. Every time you try, you're not saving the relationship, you're erasing yourself. The shadow of worthiness. Here's the question you've been swallowing. Why do you believe they're worth more than you? Is it their potential? Their charm? The way they almost loved you on Tuesday? It's because you've made them the keeper of your worth. You've handed them a scale and said, "Tell me what I weigh." But what if their neglect isn't about your value? It's about theirs. What if their inability to see you says nothing about your light and everything about their blindness? This is the shadow, your fear of your own power. Because if you admit they're not the arbiter of your worth, you'd have to face the terrifying truth. You've always held the title. The dance of avoidance. Let's cut deeper. You've used them as a distraction from you. Their mixed signals, their hot and cold, the drama of will they or won't they, it's all a smokescreen. A smokescreen for what? For the work you don't want to do. For the boundaries you're afraid to set. For the void you've been stuffing with their potential instead of filling with your own presence. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You've mistaken your avoidance for fate. Your fear for love, your silence for strength. But silence isn't strength, it's complicity, the reckoning. Ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? That they'll leave? Or that you'll stay? That they'll never change? Or that you will? This isn't about them anymore. This is about the part of you that's petrified to stand in her own fullness. The part that's addicted to the smallness of waiting, because waiting means you never have to risk being seen. But here's the paradox. You can only be loved as deeply as you're willing to be seen. And you? You've been hiding behind their refusal to see you. Transition to the threshold. I know what you're thinking, but what if I let go and there's nothing left? What if you let go and you're what's left? The journey doesn't end here. It begins. What if the emptiness you're so afraid of isn't empty at all? What if it's not the fragmented, half-alive version you've been bargaining with, but the self you abandoned long ago. The one who doesn't apologize for existing. The one who doesn't ration their joy. The one who knows, bone deep, that love isn't something you lose, it's something you become. Let that terrify you. Let it electrify you. Because this is where the lie collapses. You've been waiting for permission to exist. Permission from them, from society, from some invisible jury of enoughness. But Jung's work screams the truth you've been avoiding. Individuation isn't a choice. It's a mandate of the soul. And you? You're overdue. Letting go isn't loss, it's rebirth. You think walking away means losing love. But what if it's the first time you've ever truly loved? Not the performative love that begs, "Pick me." Not the transactional love that whispers, "I'll settle." But the ferocious love that says, "I choose me." Jung called this the process of individuation, the reclaiming of every disowned part of yourself you've handed to others like spare change. It's not selfish. It's sacred. It's the moment you stop outsourcing your worth and start embodying it. Here's the alchemy no one talks about. When you release someone who doesn't value you, you're not abandoning love, you're resurrecting it. You're pulling it out of their hands and planting it back in your own soil. The illusion of control. You've clung to them because you thought it gave you power. If I stay, I can fix it. If I stay, I can control the outcome. But here's the cosmic joke. You never had control, you had Stockholm Syndrome. You've been negotiating with a ghost, the ghost of potential, the ghost of what if, the ghost of a love that never actually showed up in the flesh. And the cost? Your aliveness, your sovereignty, your ability to see that the door was never locked. You were just leaning on it from the inside. The invitation. Ask yourself, What if their indifference is the greatest gift you've ever received? What if it's the universe shaking you by the shoulders, screaming, "Wake up! Stop donating your soul to those who can't see it. Stop confusing attachment with destiny. You are not a beggar, you are the feast." This is the pivot Jung spent his life mapping, the crisis that becomes the catalyst. The betrayal that cracks you open, not to break you, but to show you where the light has been hiding. The anatomy of courage. Letting go isn't passive. It's not giving up. It's the most violent act of self-respect you'll ever commit. It's looking at the story you've been living, the one where you're the side character in someone else's apathy, and ripping the page in half. It's admitting, I will no longer collaborate in my own diminishment. And yes, it will feel like dying, because it is a death, the death of the person who believed love had to hurt to be real. But what emerges from that ashes? A self that doesn't negotiate, a heart that doesn't apologize for its capacity, a soul that knows its worth isn't determined, it's declared. The shadows' final stand. They'll try to haunt you, you know. The memories, the what-ifs, the seductive nostalgia that airbrushes the agony and sells you the fantasy. When that happens, I need you to do something radical. Thank them. Thank them for showing you who you are not. Thank them for the clarity of their absence. Thank them for leaving space for a love that doesn't require you to abandon yourself. This is how you integrate the shadow, not by fighting it, but by thanking it for its teaching. Transition to the threshold. You've spent lifetimes building shrines to people who didn't stay. What happens when you build an altar to yourself? The finale isn't an ending, it's an initiation. This is not a happy ending. This is a revolution. And revolutions are not polite. They don't ask permission. They don't bargain. They burn down the old world to make space for the new. So let me ask you, what are you willing to burn? The apologies you never owed? The promises they never kept? The version of you that starved herself to fit into someone else's narrative? Light the match. Self-love is not a feeling. It's a war cry. You've been sold a lie that self-love is bubble baths and affirmations. Self-love is defiance. It's the refusal to shrink, to beg, to bargain. It's the roar that says, I will no longer betray myself to make you comfortable. Jung called this the integration of the self, the moment the fragmented pieces of your soul finally recognize each other. No more hiding, no more masks, no more abandoning the parts of you that inconvenience others. This is where you stop asking, why don't they love me? And start declaring, I am what love looks like. The mantra of the unbroken. Repeat after me. I am not a placeholder for someone's potential. I am not an option. I am not a lesson they'll learn too late. I am the main character. And this is my goddamn story. Let that sink into your bones. Let it rewrite your DNA. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. You're not claiming superiority. You're claiming sovereignty. The anatomy of a revolution. Letting go is not a one-time event. It's a daily rebellion. Every morning, you'll wake up and choose. The familiar ache of the past or the electric unknown of your future. Their ghost or your breath. The prison of their indifference or the frontier of your freedom. This is how you win the war. Not with grand gestures, but with microscopic acts of courage. Delete the text. Block the number. Say no without explanation. Wear the outfit. Take the trip. Reclaim the song. Every time you choose yourself, you send a message to the universe. I am no longer negotiating my existence. The shadows surrender. And what of the pain? The doubt? The days you'll want to crawl back? Don't fear them. Thank them. They're not setbacks, they're rituals. Every tear that falls isn't weakness, it's holy water baptizing the new you. Every tremor of fear isn't a warning, it's the friction of your wings unfolding. Jung wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. But you've already paid the price. Now it's time to claim the wisdom, the new world. Imagine this. A love that doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. A joy that doesn't need to be earned. A life where you're not constantly auditing your worth. This isn't a fantasy. It's your birthright. You've been conditioned to believe that love is something you find out there. But the truth? Love is the oxygen of the life you create when you stop holding your breath. The final invitation. So here's your choice. Stay small, stay safe, stay stuck in the museum of their indifference, or step into the wildfire of your becoming. This isn't about them. It never was. This is about you. The you who's been waiting, patient, infinite, unshakable, at the center of your storm. The you who doesn't need to be chosen because you've already done the choosing. The world needs that version of you. Not the one who fits. The one who frees. The last words. Not with a whimper, but with a war cry. Not with closure, but with curiosity. Not with their name on your lips, but your own. And if you forget your strength, if the old ghosts whisper, if the world tries to shrink you again, remember this. You are not a beggar. You are the feast. You are not a prisoner. You are the key. You are not a lesson. You are the revolution. This video was produced by Rocket Motivation. Please like and subscribe to support us. Thank you for listening.